sisters and brothers, family and relatives, friends, batchmates, and of course, my very beloved uncles and aunts who are here today. I think I just want to take you a little bit through the journey of my mother's life over the 79 years that she lived. Very early in my mother's life, something very tragic happened. She lost her own mother at the age of 4. She lost her own mother at the age of 4. This event was going to shape her for the rest of her life. It was very clear early in her life that nothing would come easy. The early loss of her mother and the fact that her father was thousands of miles away, in a place called Basra, which is in Iraq, would show the way for her. In fact, it's amazing that my mother met her father for exactly 6 times in her life. Just 6 times. She was put into a hostel along with her 2 sisters. And one of the amazing things that Mom would share with us is the fact that every time the time for vacation came, she and both her sisters would face it with great anxiety and trepidation. The reason being, they didn't know if somebody would come and actually take them home. Each and every time a holiday came and parents and relatives came with great joy to take away their wards back home, here was my mother worried about who was coming to take her. But the great thing about having a heart life very early in one's life is that it helped my mother crystallize her sense of values, principles and ethics. And probably that stood her in great stead in later life. I think all of us have heard our parents say these words, but probably my mom would have heard it a lot, maybe in Sunday school. And throughout the course of the childhood of 3 of us, we would hear these sentences, which meant truly deeply for her. Waste not, want not. I think all of us have heard that. Money does not grow in trees. Sow the wind and reap the whirlwind. I think that's something from the Bible. And Mom truly believed in this. A family that prays together stays together. You know, Mom had a bell which she would ring at dinner time. It was a bell to ensure that all members of the family were there together at the dinner table. Because we had 3 separate rooms and the 3 children would come with great reluctance because we were all into our own room. And this bell would have to ring at least 2 or 3 times before we would actually come to the dining table. Every mango that we had in our family was cut into 5 pieces. Amazing. And later on in life, I found that the same thing was happening in my wife's family because she also comes from a family of 5 with 3 children. The only difference was that in our family, getting the seed was the sad part. So we would not want to get the seed. It went by rotation, you know. Getting the seed went by rotation. While in my wife's family, getting the seed was the biggest thing. Like they looked forward to getting the seed. But what that simple act of cutting a mango into 5 pieces showed us was sharing. It inculcated the value of sharing. I don't know whether today's generation understands cutting a mango into 5 pieces, what it means. Because there's no question of cutting. Everyone has their own mango or their own apple. And there's one word which mom hated. I think Kalpana will remember that. And she was famous for using this word. Damn. It was a word my mom hated. And the look we would get, later we were wondering why this particular word mom never liked any of her children to use. And probably the word damn is a short form for damnation. And that's probably the reason why she did not want us to use the word damn. In 1960, at the age of 24, my mother got married to an upper division clerk, to a UDC. My dad was a UDC at the time when he got married. It was a love marriage. It was my mom marrying someone who was 1 year younger to her. I just can imagine how conservative Tamil society of that time probably took these decisions of my mother. But by 1961, my dad had got through the civil services and went on to become an Indian Police Service officer. In 1962, he was transferred from his training center in Mount Abu, which is in Rajasthan, to Assam, distant and remote Assam. It was the time of the Indo-China War. Here was my dad, my mom, and a 1-year-old baby, that is my sister Kalpana, traveling by train to a place which people were actually fleeing from because the Chinese had entered into Assam, and here was this family of 3 going towards joining the place of posting, which was Assam. Over the course of the next 50 years, I think my mom stood with my dad through thick and thin. And the tests came many, many times, and I don't think my mom flinched even on a single occasion. And there were a lot of tests that were there for my mom, for this married couple, which was my dad and mom. And being married to a police officer who considered career first and family second. That was made very clear to my mom, that career would always be first. But it's my mom who kept this family together, and there were similar stresses and strains which this marriage went through, but it withstood it all. In 1973, I was a 10-year-old. I got my first Bible. So what do I do with this Bible? I take mom's Bible. I don't know what to do with this Bible. I just know to read. I don't know what the implications are spiritually. So what I did, I take mom's Bible and I look through what she has done in her Bible, and I see that she has underlined various favorite verses of hers. So line by line, I underlined those very same verses in the Bible. And today, when I look at those verses, I think it's going to hold a lot more meaning. A lot more meaning. And I will understand what were the reasons why my mom underlined those particular verses in the Bible. In 1974, my mom suddenly surprised us by deciding to be a teacher in a school, in a convent in Shillong, the same school where my wife was studying in. And for those 2 years that she was in that school, she left so many memories for the pupils that she taught. Even to this day, her students remember her very, very fondly, and many of them have sent messages of condolence. And probably one of the reasons my mom was very famous was because she sang. After her class was over, the students would ask her, "Ma'am, can you please sing this song?" And here would be my mother singing that song. So, surprising thing is, those singing genes, unfortunately, I think none of us three kids inherited. I don't know where it went. Neither Jonathan nor Kalpana nor me. And the other surprising thing, I remember going for a picnic, and you suddenly see a mom swimming, and swimming brilliantly. Swimming with backstroke. And just wonder of wonders. I mean, then in 1976, my mom decides to do her MPhil in geography. All these were the temporal side of my mom, because in 1983, she went through a medical scare and she had a surgery. 1983 was a watershed year for my mother. I think following that operation, the spiritual side of my mother came to the fore. She kept searching for what would give meaning to her life. And this search did not end fast. This search took a full 4 years. It was in 1986-87 when she found her calling in the Pentecostal world. And for the next 28 years of her life, she stood steadfast in her faith. It was not easy for her, because what happens when there are members of the family who are advising you what you should do in your life and what you should not do. Here was my mom who stood firm, and that is what she did for the rest of her life. I want to quickly share 3 miracles which I believe from a very personal point of view. I think miracles is a very strong word. Probably it may not be a miracle, but looking at it from my view, I think it's a miracle. The day was July 25th, 1990. My dad was the Director General of Police in Shillong. We were living in this huge bungalow, just the 3 of us, my dad, my mom and myself. I don't know where my sister, maybe Jonathan was in the border security force at that point of time. It was 4 a.m. in the morning, and my mom came frantically to my room. She said, "Come immediately." I went to the room where my dad was, and there he was, propped up against some pillows, sweating profusely. My mom did an amazing thing. She did not tell me call for a doctor, call for the police officers, call for the neighbors. She just picked up the phone and called the Pentecostal pastor of Shillong. I am in a daze. I'm seeing my father on one side, almost paralyzed, and my mother on this side talking to the pastor. And I can hear the prayer coming through the phone, the prayer of the pastor. It was a miracle because in the next few minutes, my dad became normal. It was something amazing. That same day, he attended office like any other day. It will not at least forever etched in my memory. It was a day when I could have regretted for the rest of my life that I stood paralyzed, not knowing what to do. Whether I should call a doctor or what should I do? What should a son do when he sees his father who's probably going through a heart attack? That was a miracle, and that was the first miracle which I saw in my life. The second miracle relates to my own mother, and it's over a prolonged period of time. My mother in 1991 was diagnosed with diabetes, and the strange thing was she totally believed in faith healing, much against the advice from family, much against that advice, much against the advice of family which wanted her to take medicines, which wanted her to do all the normal treatments. And we would be shocked because she continued to enjoy her fruits, her chocolates and her biscuits. And every time a family member would say, "Mom, what are you doing?" she would come up with just one reply: "I am healed." And you don't have anything more to say as a family member. I am healed. She had that amazing faith in the Lord Jesus. And the funny thing is, the third miracle in my life, the third miracle happened on 27th of May, and it relates to myself. See, for the past 3 months, I was having a swelling in my knee, which was a huge lump, and it's something called bursitis. Bursitis is something which fills up with fluid and can be a very painful condition. Over the course of these last 2 months, I had taken 4 courses of aspiration where the doctor removes the fluid from the bursa, which is a sac in the knee. Unfortunately, each time it came back in a big way. And this 5th time, it was particularly ugly. It was the size of a tennis ball. And in my mind, I was telling that when I am over with my mom's ceremonies, I am going to get a doctor in Chennai this Saturday, that is tomorrow. I was already showing Anju a plate where I saw the name of a doctor, and I told Anju that I'm going to get this aspirated, and I hope this is the 5th final time. Please God, save me. I've suffered enough for this. In the evening, we were just talking among ourselves, the family members, my brother, my sister, and Anju. And my hand accidentally hit my knee. And I suddenly felt that something is wrong here. I could not feel the lump. I immediately rolled up my hand till my knee. And I, who am a very big skeptic, found that the lump is gone. I thought for a moment that I'm in the wrong knee, so I rolled up the other side. I knew it was on the right hand side, but I rolled up my left hand side. And sure enough, it was not. It was a miracle on the day my mother was buried. And I truly believe that this was the final blessing. See, there's one word which would epitomize my mother. If there was one word you would ask me as a son, what is that word which would describe your mother? I would say the word sacrifice. It's because of her sacrifice that there was a roof over our head when my dad retired. However modest that flat is, however modest that Maruti van which my dad drove post his retirement, it was because of my mom's sacrifices. I just want to share one final thought. It's just a thought which went in my mind. It was in the final moments that I was going to see my mother. In the sense, it's the moment when the coffin lid closes and the coffin goes down to the grave. And the pastor said, any of you want to do your final goodbyes? And I did something which my mom did 100 times in my life. And that is the sign of putting a cross on the forehead. It was a cross on my mom's forehead. Very emotional for me that moment, because it just took me back to the times when my own mom used to put that cross in my head. And it was a wonderful custom, when we wore new clothes, or we undertook a journey, or we were appearing in an exam. It was just a simple gesture. And I regretted that I never put that sign on my mom when she was alive. I wish I had done that. It was a final regret, but I know that I'll be forgiven for this. My mom lived a very simple life. She lived a life without guile and without ego. The life was rooted to faith, which was rooted in the Bible. I would like to thank God for my mother's life, for the life she touched, and for the memories she leaves behind. Thank you, God, for my mother. Thank you very much.